The children feed off their parents, and how we project our feelings and thoughts on the world, our children will model that.
I relate to that. We live it. It's true.
She doesn't want people to hear her voice without like her express intention, whether it's in like a live setting or whether it's recorded.
Welcome back to another episode of Unspoken Words, a Selective Mutism podcast hosted by Dr. Elisa Shippon-Blum and the Smart Center, produced and published by New Edition Productions. I'm recording this from South Florida, where later this week I will be at Stage Kitchen and Bar with the Smart Center team for their 4th annual SMRI fundraiser dinner. When this episode comes out, the dinner will already be in the past, so make sure you guys go to Instagram and check out photos from the event. I know it's going to be amazing. We're all really, really excited. This particular podcast episode was recorded back in January at CommuniCamp. In the episode, Dr. E chats with 3 inspiring parents where they touch on building confidence and independence, addressing fears about speaking, how to empower your children, and much, much more. Remember, before we get started, if you have any questions on anything you hear in today's episode, make sure to ask us via our Ask Dr. E form. All you have to do is head to selectivemutismcenter.org/Ask Dr. E, that's ASKDRE, and enter your question in the form. The team reads all of your submissions, and we do our very best to answer them on podcast episodes, blog posts, and on social media. And speaking of social media, for the best of this episode and every episode of Unspoken Words, make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram and on YouTube. We are at Unspoken Words _podcast on Instagram and Unspoken Words Podcast by Dr. E on YouTube. All right, without further ado, please enjoy the latest episode of the Unspoken Words Podcast.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. E. Before we get started with today's episode, I have something really exciting to share with you. On Friday, April 4th, 2025, we'll be hosting our all-day Selective Mutism in the School virtual conference offering 6.5 continuing education credits for professionals attending. We've put together an incredible lineup of Selective Mutism experts and will discuss the assessment, development of accommodations, interventions, and strategies to help the child and teen with selective mutism, social anxiety, and shyness speak in school. So mark your calendar, April 4th, and if you're a parent, be sure to share this opportunity with your child's school staff, doctor, therapist, so they too can attend. Registration details can be found on our website, www.selectivemutismcenter.org, and in the description of this podcast episode. Together, we can create a world where every child has a voice. Now, enjoy the episode. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Unspoken Words. Today's a special recording. We love it. We're at CommuniCamp, and we're doing one of our live chats with parents. So I thought we would kind of get started. We're going to talk about school challenges and touch on separation anxiety, children concerned about others hearing their voice, and we're going to chat for a while. So I'm excited. So we'd love you to introduce yourselves.
My name's Sarah Schwanke-Khilji. Should I mention something about, I have a daughter named Ida who's 11 with selective mutism, diagnosed about 4 years ago now, 5 years. 2020, yeah.
And you're from Botswana?
Oh, sorry. I live in Botswana. We live in Botswana, although we moved there also in 2020 from Thailand, where Ida was born. I'm originally from Oregon.
So you took a long flight here.
Yeah.
My name is Kevin Savell. I have a daughter, Adira, who is 6. And we've been coming to the Smart Center for a little while now. We've done a camp before, and we do get therapy. And she's come a super long way. Obviously, it's something that we're still working on every day. We discovered her selective mutism in pre-K. When we were surprised by a report from her teacher that she does not say a word in school, which is completely, unlike anything we experience at home. So we knew something was going on. And now she's in 1st grade, and she's made some really huge strides, and we're keeping it going. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hi, I'm Shayna. We're from Erie, Pennsylvania, so it's about a 6-hour trip. My daughter's Harper. She's also 6. I noticed that she had selective mutism very young when she first started speaking, really. She just really shut down around family members, but she was fine with us. Like even family members that she would see frequently, it was just, I knew something wasn't, quite right there. This is our first camp, but I'm really looking forward to learning some new strategies to help her outside of here and hopefully helping with a lot of separation anxiety that she experiences.
Great. So this is wonderful. I'm meeting you. I've met you before, and it's just so wonderful to see you guys and watch the evolution of the parents during parent training. It's been wonderful. You loving camp?
Yeah, we're learning a lot for sure.
Good. And your kids are doing great. So that's wonderful. And some of our listeners will hear kids. I say this in every CommuniCamp when we do this, that we're a little further from the door than the last camp we did this at, but you'll often hear the kids running around and chatting, laughing, talking. And so it's kind of nice because it's a camp for selectively mute kids, but the kids are doing great. And a lot of them have found their voice and they're just doing fabulous. So for me, this is just so rewarding. I think I shared with you during parent education, CommuniCamp pulls it all together, parent education, watching the evolution in all of you, and then seeing this progress with the kids is just incredible. And the tools you're going to get and you're getting. So I want to have some free conversation, chat about different things, and kind of get started there. So one of the themes that we have is the separation anxiety. Do you want to just touch on it? I have your questions, but it would be nice to kind of talk about you with Harper in school and how it's manifesting and what your main concern is.
Okay. So yeah, with her, it's almost more so of the separation anxiety than the mutism. I mean, it's like she's in dance, she's in gymnastics, and she does, really well if I'm right there. Like I can't sit off to the side with the other parents and have a normal conversation. I have to be right there where she can see me, and she's constantly looking over at me for that reassurance that, yeah, I'm still here, So I've tried to set little goals where, okay, well, maybe next time I'll sit at the table a little bit further away, or something like that, and we'll get there, but then something will happen. A new kid will join the class, or she'll have a new coach for the day for gymnastics or something, and then it's back to square one and I have to be right there again. So how do you navigate the challenges of go when you keep regressing? And of course she doesn't speak at all either. I mean, so that is an issue, but I can't even get her to be comfortable to even engage with anyone else. So
do you guys have any concerns with separation at all with your children, or that's not really a huge concern?
That was a bigger concern with Adira a few years ago. She would take gymnastics class, she would take swimming class, and although she would do it, sometimes it was hard to get her in there. Once she was in, sometimes it was hard for her to fully participate. She would have a lot of anxiety around it. Now that she's 6, that has seemed to get better, probably a combination of everything, treatment and just her age. But it definitely was something we struggled with. And even getting her to do anything extracurricular now is hard because she still has some of those separation anxieties.
Yeah. So you think about separation anxiety. Well, first of all, SM is a social communication anxiety, separation anxiety. So that anxiety component is there. There's a lot of different angles to go at. The first thing is, why may she have the separation anxiety, right? It's multifactorial. First of all, you said she's mute. She doesn't talk in these environments, right? So that kind of inability to get her needs met, her wants met, to be able to connect is not happening probably. So that's an insecurity on her part. So you are a pillar of safety and trust. And so one of the key aspects in any environment she goes in is to try to have that in these environments: connection, trust, which means now in every sport or activity, you're not going to be able to have that person be her person if they're leading a class, but they need to be educated on how to manage her. Like teachers need to be trained, the buddy process, having a safe person. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is your own anxiety and worries and fears. And do we project that onto our kids? Because they feel our anxiety. So one of that is kind of faking it till you make it, working on your own. But I think the biggest thing is her independence and self-confidence. And what's happening is it's kind of a loop. You're anxious because you're seeing her be uncomfortable and wanting to protect and save her. Then she's seeing that and also doesn't have the skills yet. So the beauty is she's now in treatment or starting treatment, whether it's with us or someone else, to be able to build the skills to self-advocate, teaching her how to initiate on her own, even if it's non-verbally at first, being able to get her needs met and being able to communicate. As she becomes more communicative and progresses, her confidence in itself will go up, but her ability to get her needs met will be there. So I think it's multifactorial. It's not just one thing. So it's her gaining independence and confidence and really building those. There's so many ways to build independence in children: decision making, confidence building, knowing, like asking that, like schedules and having them know what's happening and when, and really helping them build their skills and confidence. That's a whole podcast in itself. And I will definitely attach a really good document I wrote on independence and confidence and how to build it in elementary age children and teens, because that's a big area that we work on with families, how to help those children become confident, and also how to help you step back and asking them, what do you think you should do? And so we jump in and save. And so then they don't know and they don't learn. So there's just so many aspects to this. Also, stressors, not that I'm saying this generally, by no means am I saying this is your family. I don't know your family, but I have seen it where if there's a lot, like a new baby, a new move, that kind of uncertainty in the home environment, and not even sometimes wanting to miss what's happening at home can be one aspect of separation. Like, I don't want to leave, but from what I understand of your daughter, she loves school. She loves to do these things. But that kind of stressful home environment, for a variety of reasons, will lead to a child being less secure with themselves. So I think it's multifactorial. Having a safe buddy, bringing like a stuffy your child's age that she knows represent, and talking to her about it. So rather than you just step back, it's almost talking to her and giving her that cognitive awareness that, hey, I'm really proud of you for being in gymnastics. You noticed how close I sat? Next time I'm going to sit 2 steps back. And kind of giving her almost her take on that, or, would you like me to sit here or there? But your goal of moving back. And so that she's proactive in this and knows what's happening rather than turning around one day and seeing you're not there. The one thing I've learned about with working with this population of children is that, and teens and even adults I work with, is that you can't try to fool them, trick them in any way. This treatment is all about their understanding, their feelings, valuing them, respecting where they're at, and talking to them about it in a very matter-of-fact way and trusting them. And when that's there, they start to let go and feel safe, because some of these children are just holding on like fear. And I think that's a big piece of that. Do you guys have any questions on that? Does that make sense?
That definitely makes sense. And I've noticed the confidence piece is huge, because when she does make these slight little like improvements or things that she didn't think she could do, and then she does it, and then she's like, oh, next time you can sit out there. Because there was a point where she was there. I was sitting out in the hall with the other parents and stuff, but like something would happen, like a new kid would join, and then I'd have to be right there again. So I know we'll get there again. It's just getting her
and giving her these, like what I call, I'm really big with big shot roles. Like, you see what your child does well and you capitalize on that. Like you were talking with your daughter with art. That's her thing. That's her confidence, helping another child with art. So talking about separation, like doing an art class would be a great way to work on separation if your child loves art. Does she likes?
I feel that's what I hear. It gives her something to focus on too. So like all the attention's not on her. So that is a huge, like a great icebreaker, like with someone new.
Well, exactly. So her working with a buddy that you might be working on outside get-togethers with. Also, the need for connection is so important for individuals with separation anxiety, another person or people that child can connect with. So again, I don't know your situation, but the buddy process, 3 to 5 buddies paired with, grouped with, teachers are aware, they're working, you know what I mean? Paired in groups, small groups, things like that, one-on-one, but friendship groups, lunch bunches, but also you working on the outside on that in the best way possible to build those friendships, because then all of a sudden they've got their friends. And that is a huge piece. And one of the things that you did bring up was that, like, coming at the end of the day, that's not a bad thing, because I think until she's further along, I wouldn't start experimenting earlier in the day coming in, because I think once you're there, based on what you're saying, she's going to not let you leave.
Right.
So I have no problem with that method right now. I think I kind of think that makes sense.
Until she's further
Absolutely. And I think she's 6. You can talk to her about this and all the things you're proud of her. But as I say, look within yourself and how you may be reacting to her and feeding worry. One of the things I say is you state it, acknowledge a child's worry or fear, but you don't feed it. You state it, you can repeat it, acknowledge it, validate her, but then you kind of make a statement and move on to the next conversation. Because if you feed and give her whole, I call it the dissertation. I mean, that's kind of fresh in my mind because I work with doctoral students, but a dissertation is a big, long discussion. And it's too much for most of our kids. And you don't want to solve every problem. You want to ask about it, help them help you. What would make you feel comfortable? And if it works for you, that's a great thing we can try. That gives them that sense of control that they so desperately want. So all of these things that I'm sharing, even though your daughter may not have separation anxiety, you can pull.
Did, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's part of it too. Because partly I think it's age. For her, it was also around that age, even before her selective mutism diagnosis, like 6, 7. There were some things, especially for activities she felt uncomfortable with. For her, it was swimming. She felt like really fearful in the pool. And so like she would have. And I think as she got older, a lot of what Dr. E is saying, we had sort of tried to do intuitively, but also now she's at a point where she can think through scenarios before she gets into them and sort of put strategies in place. So I think as they get older, they can do more of the anticipatory.
Well, it's possible that you were able to guide her and whoever, if you had worked with anyone else, to teach her to become a problem solver. Again, remember how I talked about the driver in the car and the passenger in the car? I'm not asking your 6-year-old to drive your car, but they tend to be at this nature, these kids by nature, whatever age they're at, teens all the time, the passenger in the car where everyone is navigating life for them and they're going along with it. We want them to become the driver in the car so that they're starting to problem solve, make decisions, and you talk with them about it. And I think that's what that's what you're saying is that she's at that
Be
point.
part of the discussion. She loves to make plans.
But
Like
a lot of
before we came
teens
here,
aren't
the
like
weather report, right? She wrote the weather report.
there you go.
She's super excited about this now.
We're not, but she is.
But she really likes that ability to think ahead, plan, and then she feels a lot more confident. Like then she gets to the school here and she's fine, right? She goes to her class. So yeah, I think it's partly developmental level and then partly, as you said, skills to make her feel more in control and more independent.
Yeah, and I think just as a whole, separation anxiety is so common in this population because they lack social communication, confidence, and skills. So of course they're going to be like, I don't feel safe, especially with families, not our families now, because they realize you're not going to throw them in a big soccer tournament and leave because that's like, no, not going to do that. But that our children we need to meet them at their level and stage and where they're at and gradually move. I always say you want to create a world as much as you can that they feel safe in, good in, and they're functioning. Then you begin to branch out. You don't start here out and then move in. You start here. So rather than joining soccer, a big soccer with 1 million people, that's loud, large, lots of people, you maybe start with your kids in a backyard soccer or meet at the soccer field with a couple friends, your buddies from school, and you build these skills and confidence till you start to do the big, loud, large places for many of our sensory sensitive kids. And that will help them feel safe. It's about making her feel safe where you feel confident. And she senses that. Look, how intuitive are our kids? They're so intuitive. And so they feel all that you feel. I would say that is like they're highly sensitive and they sense. So when you're nervous, you're like concerned, they pick that up like that. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an area for you I'm proud of you for that. And you show your confidence. And the interesting part, and I think, Kevin, you can share because you have been working with us, is to see the evolution in your own sense of self where you're confident because you see the progress she's making.
Yeah. I mean, even sitting here right now, I'm thinking back when she had a lot of separation anxiety and she wasn't able to do certain things or do certain things the way we knew she wanted to and we wanted her to. At the time, we probably didn't even connect that with the selective mutism. It was just kind of two separate issues and we never thought of it being part of the same thing. But as her selective mutism treatment continues and she gains more confidence, her separation anxiety has resolved.
I mean, she's in there taking over the classroom from what I understand.
Which is what I'm hearing. Yes, I'm hearing reports that she's being her sassy self in there. So I'm super excited about that. But also just thinking of myself back when she was having the separation anxiety and the way I was dealing with it. is completely different than I would now.
Your confidence, she's feeling your confidence too.
Right.
Because I see it. Like you're like, yeah, she's doing great. And you believe it from like your core being. She feels that. It's amazing. The kids feel your confidence.
I agree. I like you said how the kids feed off the
Yeah.
parents and the parents feed off the kids.
Yes.
That's completely true. And
Yes.
I relate to that. We live it. It's true.
Yeah, I just have to give this example, and you guys are going to laugh. I'll never forget years and years ago, I was working with a family. Child was similar in age, about 7, and she had never been to the dentist because she was highly sensitive. And so the parent was sitting across the desk, and we were talking, and the child was just sitting there, kind of playing and having, look comfortable. It was a great session, and the mom's like, Dr. E, we got to go to the dentist. And the child's sitting right next to her. And she's like, and I'm just so nervous about it. I'm so worried because she's so sensitive and they have to open her mouth and stick things in. Well, I'm watching from across. I'm like trying to get the mom stop. And I eventually said, hey, and I diverted the conversation. But that child went from having feeling good to terrified because the mother was projecting her own fears, her own anxiety. No wonder this kid never went to the dentist, right? Or it was so scary. And so anyway, my point being with that story is that the children feed off their parents, and how we project out our feelings and thoughts on the world, our children will model that. Yeah. So I just thought that was an interesting story, just kind of, relate to,
It's definitely opened my eyes about, how I project things, and when she's around.
But you're also anxious. Like we're all anxious. We want our children to thrive and do well. So we're trying to set them up. So in your defense, you're just trying to protect her. But now it's like, hey, the way I'm going to protect her is help her become a confident social communicator and independent as well. And that's working through this and throughout it, as Kevin was saying, the confidence you'll get, she's going to feed on that. And it keeps just going like that. And before you know it, it's like, this is a thing of the past.
Yeah, it's not just therapy for them. It's also for us as well, as parents and just as independent adults,
I mean, that's why CommuniCamp, honestly, for me, I couldn't imagine doing this without you guys being here. Like, to me, it's just as much parent education and support as it is with your children. Because guess what? If you don't implement the changes and make these changes, it's just going to go so far, because they don't know how to say, like I said yesterday, to go into their teacher and say, I need you to do this, this, and this. We've got to train teachers. We have to train parents and understand. Did you guys like the term look, listen, and learn? I love that.
I do too. And the other 3 L's, the large, loud, lots of people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it
so
all resonates.
Yeah, doesn't it? It's kind of neat. So I want to touch on, and both of you had questions on kind of how do you share your children's concerns with others hearing their voice and making those leaps with the reaction they could get from their friends. Do you want to both share a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Adira is very aware of what's going on around her, how people are reacting to certain things. And I mean, I know it's common, but one of her biggest fears, I think, is if she does start talking in school, even if she feels like she wants to and she's getting more comfortable, she does not like when people point out that she hadn't been talking before, or, I've witnessed people in school say to her, they'll see her say something to me and they'll go, I didn't know you could talk. And then, it just, her eyes widen and she tries to avoid, talking near them. So I know as much as she wants to, school is such a hard place to make that leap and to get that confidence to start talking. So, I mean, one of my questions was, as she moves forward, would you recommend her staying with some of the kids she is comfortable with?
Yeah, I know that was your second part of the question.
Yeah.
Well, so it's 2-pronged, so I'll get to that. Hey, listeners, we'll get back to the episode in a second. I want to tell you about CommuniCamp, our popular 3+ day intensive group treatment and all-day parent education and support program designed to help parents, children, and teens overcome selective mutism, social anxiety, and extreme shyness. Over 3+ action-packed days, your child or teen will engage in immersive activities guided by expert clinicians that build confidence and communication skills in a supportive, fun, and collaborative environment. Spaces are limited and spots book up fast. To learn more, please find CommuniCamp in this episode's description or head to communicamp.org and complete our interest form, and our team will be in touch. Let's help your child or teen find their voice at CommuniCamp. Let's get back to the episode. You have a similar situation. Do you want to just share?
Yeah.
I'm going to address that because that's...
Yeah, I think I also have like a two-part question. The first part is very similar to what you shared about Adira. Like for Ida, and she can articulate this, she says that the thing that makes her most anxious about the idea of speaking in school, because right now she doesn't speak to friends or teachers at school, no one at school, is the response she's going to get, especially from peers, more so than from teachers. And I don't know if that's because she perceives them to be more unpredictable or why exactly that is, but definitely she finds it easier to imagine speaking to adults than to peers. So that it sounds,
that makes sense to me.
The second question that's linked to this is part of what it seems to be rooted in is that she has this like protection around her voice, and she doesn't want people to hear her voice without like her express intention, whether it's in like a live setting or whether it's recorded.
I mean, she doesn't want to accidentally talk where they...
Exactly. Like she doesn't want people to hear, like, even if she's in a setting where she's feeling comfortable and she's not feeling anxious and she's expressing herself verbally, if she finds out someone overheard it, for instance, that makes her very upset. Or if she finds out someone's watched a video of her where she's speaking and she didn't authorize it, she feels very upset. So
Yes.
these are my two kind of things I'm
Right.
trying to
Let's
tease
think
out
about
with
it.
her.
Do both your children have a bit of a social anxiety trait? Although I would say Adira is not so socially anxious now that she found her voice.
Definitely less socially anxious.
She was very speech phobic.
Yeah.
So that's like,
She was.
you have children that are stuck in the nonverbal, that some can be socially anxious. I think there's a lot of kids like that maybe felt the expectation for speaking, became stuck, and they almost appear socially anxious because they lack the confidence. But their true personality and nature is not an overly timid child. And that's Adira.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I mean, so she's taking over the classroom.
Right.
She's not, that's a socially anxious child in a group of new people wouldn't be like, I see her at the center. She's going to be done. She was very speech phobic. That's why the sounds to words RSA approach worked. So, which leads me to two things. You rarely do children just start to talk and chat away at school. It's a very gradual process. That's what I want to preface this with. The other thing is that talking to your children about this and their fears and worries is how we start too, is what would make you comfortable. So one way is, let's pretend we're writing it like, do they both have friends that they connect with? Yes. So for those children that they're not talking to, do you want to? If they want to, most of these two do, your kids. And also a letter that if they could write to their friends, what would that letter say that they'd want them to know? And here's what I've done with some children. Some, we don't send the letter, but others, they give the letter and it says, I'm working on using my words and I'd like to add you to my club. And so we use the word club because for kids that are kind of stuck in the nonverbal, which both of your kids, because you're telling me she's somewhat comfortable, but she's just not talking, that ritual sound approach of unlearning mutism, kind of shaping sounds into words in a very ritualistic way. I mean, I do that with adults that are stuck. It's not like goo goo gaga. It's literally helping them see sounds and words from a cognitive perspective and putting it together to their answering questions and then eventually reading questions. Then once they add you to the club, the verbal stage, then you do keep it going questions. So to keep communication going, she's got to probably add people in school to her club, and it will not be in the classroom. It'll be out of the classroom. And if you have a child that progresses at home, we set up, remember I told you I'm very big with accountability, knowing what, when, where, and how, because this gives the children the control that they don't have. So they know that's home I do it, check it off. Maybe they need to do sounds to words or just keep it going questions. 3 questions answered, 3 questions asked, and then you transition it. I check it off. I did it in the car, did it in the playground or wherever, did it in the resource room, did it in the empty classroom. So now you've transitioned, verbalization. Sometimes it's just question, answer, and the children realize that I now can answer questions and ask questions to my friends at school. Little kids, we adapt it based on where they're at with reading and sight words and things like that. Could be favorite questions, would you rather questions. It could be like whatever it is that what they're working on, but they're visual and cognitive awareness of shifting makes the difference between inconsistency and consistency. So seeing that chart helps them and who they added and where. I'm telling you, that is so critical with this population of kids and teens. So seeing that, but then adding that friend, and what do they feel comfortable doing adding their friend? Is it the sounds to words and then keep it going questions? But at some point, they're going to have to help make a decision. Your daughter's older to be able to say what she feels comfortable doing. Do any of these kids ever hear her voice anywhere?
So none of her friends she's made since COVID started. Her friends from before, she still speaks with, but none of
So
her.
I have to tell you, as far as the sounds to words, did they talk to you? Do you know much about that? So ritual sound approach is when you shape sounds into words. And my guess is if she's mute in the room or was mute, they're going to be working on that unless she can just answer with questions. If they're going to try, but that is an approach that you transition from nonverbal to verbal. And I know Adira, that's how Dr. Jenna got her verbal.
It is. And also, we've been doing one-on-one meetings with her teacher several times a week. And we start with those kinds of exercises with a pom-pom in her hand and trying to move the pom-pom with the different sounds, which Adira loves. But this past time we met with her teacher, we started with that warm-up. And after doing it once or twice, Adira says, I don't need to do that anymore. I already talked to my teacher now. And so it's like a concrete thing in her mind. Like I saw the light going off, like I'm comfortable enough now to say words in front of my teacher. I don't need to do this right now,
Right.
Yeah.
So some children need that ritualistic column by column by column. Some young children start by a blowing sound, which is what you're describing, but some will just push air through their teeth, or, but then they get to their up, cat, dog. And then eventually it's like, what's your favorite animal? And they look at you and you go, write that down. And then they sound, and then there they go. And once they realize, they repeat that in class away from the group. So I'm giving you strategies to kind of work to get the verbalization going, but also in as far as it's talking to the children about their comfort and what they feel they can do. And does she have friends outside of school that she sees? Is she mute with them?
She's mute with her friends outside of school. Yeah.
She's a ritual sound approach kid. So she needs to unlearn their conditioned
I
mutism.
think she tried something like this with her speech therapist a few years back, but she was at that point like, I know you're trying to trick me.
So the
And you're
ritual
trying to
sound,
get me to say
no. The ritual sound approach, with all due respect, is a very specific type of treatment where it's very cognitive, very aware. You're not tricking them. She knows what she's doing, when she's doing it, how she's doing it, with who she's doing it with, and the location. And it's
comfortable, basically.
yeah, and the awareness and control. And it's very chart-like with a child her age. So I'm just saying, I feel like that's a strategy that I would definitely talk with the clinicians about, if I am sure they're implementing this. Anyway, so that's that. And also did you understand the part about the gradual? And what if they heard her voice? What if they heard your voice?
For Ida,
What
so this
they
happened
say?
recently, actually. I was in a car with a friend and she called me on WhatsApp video. And she didn't realize there were people around me. And she started speaking and then she asked, is there someone there? And then she was inconsolable for the next hour and a half. So, and she couldn't express to me why that was so upsetting for her.
Yeah, she needs to be working with, like you said, you have a therapist to really work on, okay, they heard my voice. What does that mean? Did the world fall?
Yeah.
Let's talk about what that makes you feel and really dive deep. And I have kids on the lookout, if I'm and also experimenting with sounds around people. Hi. You see what I mean? Did the world change? Starting to just put some sounds out there. It's also a natural evolution to whisper and speak in a quiet voice as they're starting to get, quote unquote, their feet wet, their voice wet, right? To be able to just start like this until they have more comfort and verbal confidence with more people will they transition into a regular voice. So for people that are all about why she's whispering, it's lack of comfort, confidence, and verbal. Well, it's lack of connection sometimes, comfort, and also verbal confidence. And so adding people to the club, more people, enlarging the group. So the answer to your question is you never want to abruptly change. You want to gradually move kids out and move kids in. So there's a handout called Buddies, Buddies, and Buddies, and I'll affix it to this episode. It might be one of the handouts that it's also on our website in the resource section. But it's just a way to rotate kids in and rotate kids out because you don't want to abruptly get rid of other children and bring in a whole bunch. And there's something called the train ride. Train ride is if a child, she's not talking in a group, but she's talking one-on-one quietly with one peer. How do you go from here to here? And there's something called the train ride. And the train ride is this visual representation of stop one is meeting with, let's say, if it's the teacher, that's her stop one. Now adding a peer, maybe 2 or 3 peers. And I will say that when I work with teachers and I kind of brainstorm with them as to when could you do this, they come up with times. It's not like, oh, this is too much to ask. They come up with times. You know what? We have small group work. You know, and I do get that I'm going to pair her and group her. And then they start talking about it. And the mom's like, yeah, then we're going to work with them on outside get-togethers. And now you're simultaneously doing outside, hopefully, get-togethers with the teacher pairing and grouping. And maybe, you know what, why not do a lunch bunch or a friendship group and have that in your 504 or IEP so that they're now doing these games and activities and working on this in a fun way in the classroom to enlarge their group. But the train ride is, think about it as stops. It's not one child at a time. It's a few children at a time. And so as you're rotating kids out or in, the train ride is making the group larger. So all of a sudden it's 12 kids, it's 18 kids. But the point is you start here rather than go from stop 1 all the way to stop 8, right? Which is a huge amount of kids. You have to, from this population, you need to take it small and then enlarge it slowly and gradual rather than throw them in the deep end. Interesting, right?
And that's where we are now. So we're setting up play dates. She's super comfortable with, I think, 3 girls in her class. Still nonverbal with them, but they're her friends. So we're setting up play dates, but that's interesting. So after setting up some play dates, we can talk to teacher about doing some small group
You
work in class
absolutely have
with those
to.
girls. Yeah.
Yeah, a neat play date would be to say to those parents, hey, what if after school we hang out at the school and maybe you have access to the school and you're doing it in the school. And then those kids can also be your whisper buddies or verbal intermediary. So now let's say she transitioned to 2 or 3 kids. The teacher, let's say it was the music teacher and she hasn't added the music teacher to her club. The music teacher might say, did you want to use the flute or the horn? Which one would you like to play? Like maybe she stopped asking questions because you don't ask kids with SM questions, which is not true. You have to ask. It's understanding how they can respond, but you have to ask questions as they'll never respond. And so, do you want the flute? Do you want to play the horn, the flute, the recorder, whatever? And now it's flute or recorder. Tell Rebecca. And then she turns, tells Rebecca, okay, the flute or something. So it's like you train the teachers to ask these questions, prompt to tell a peer, or it's possible just by that question and given some time, 5 to 7 seconds, she may just answer as she builds her confidence. You can't just assume, right? And teens don't tend to use the intermediary much. They don't feel as confident using the intermediary. So once you directly progress them, and she may just progress with, like you said, you start the strategy, realize I can do it. She doesn't even need it. You know, I don't know where she'll end with it. I don't know your daughter, but it can be very, very detailed or it can be very subtle. It's how you adapt it to that particular child.
It all connects and everything is related. And, you know, when you can put it all together, it really just, it makes a lot of sense and is so helpful with helping move your children forward in this.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
like if I never know what someone's going to grab. So I try to say it in different ways because you start to see themes.
Even if you were speaking to them, I'm thinking of, okay, how can I apply this in Harper's situation? I can take, you know, befriend one of the parents in her gymnastics class and set up a play date. So then she's more comfortable going to gymnastics because she has a buddy, you know.
And maybe like this super mom and pick her up and take her to gymnastics once you become real buddies.
Yeah.
Or meet for lunch. Go for ice cream.
I think it's just about setting the world up for her to be successful.
Yes. You set the world up for her in a very like matter-of-fact, subtle way. That's what I call silent goals. Silent goals are when parents and teachers set the world up in a very subtle but very workable situation. Everything we're talking about is not something difficult.
Right.
It's just how you start to think about it. If you're going to a birthday party, call the parents, say, hey, how about if they meet together? You know, how about if we go together or we meet right outside the building? And all of a sudden she's going in with a buddy.
Right.
Wow, what a difference.
The confidence.
The confidence.
Yeah.
Right.
The missing piece.
The missing piece.
Mhm.
And I'm telling you, it works like a charm. You just got to keep doing it, having her help other kids with the puzzle in the room that she's really good at and knowing that she's great at that puzzle. You see what I mean? Or reading. And then she's all of a sudden starts to read because she's strong in her academics. She starts to say a word or two because she's confident in it. It's all about confidence, independence, and giving them that like inner strength. They get that inner strength from all of this. There's so much to say, so little time.
But it does start to come naturally. I'm not
Yes.
sure exactly how long you guys have been on this path with SM, but you know, at the beginning, it's a little overwhelming because it's like, all right, we have to remember to do this. And then we would get down on ourselves if we didn't, and we felt like we set her back. But now it's like, no matter where we go and everything we do, it automatically is just there. You know, all of these tools and ways to set things up. We're constantly thinking about it without, you know, trying now.
Yeah,
So
you may
it's-
not be like charting hand over takeover, but you know to give her the credit card to pay or to get the ice cream from the server. And that simple act stimulates social engagement and eye contact, which is the fuel to communication.
Yeah.
So for our shadowing kids, and it's like, no, that's not going to work. You can't go from this to chatty at all. It's like, no, it's like a million miles down the road, but it's not as far down the road when you start to set it up right. It starts to make sense and you start to see what is working well for my daughter, my son, what is working well. And you really capitalize on that. There's just millions of examples to share, but I know Brandon is like, wrap it up, Dr. E. All right, this has been amazing. And I love this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just
is
love
great.
this.
Yeah.
I remember the first CommuniCamp we did this at. I'm so pumped when I meet with you guys because it's so validating to see like this all in like the feeling I get of the empowerment and to keep doing it. Like, I just love it.
And you instill so much hope and everything, and we just adore your work and thank you so much for what you do. Like, yes.
Well, you know what? The fact that you mentioned the word hope, that's what CommuniCamp does. It gives you the hope and it gives you the confidence yourself that you need to keep on moving. And individual care. I mean, Adira is a different kid.
Yeah, she is. I mean, to see her be herself in front of other people or in settings where she couldn't before. I mean, there's nothing more gratifying as a parent.
Yeah, be there.
She will
So,
be there.
I know. I'm so excited. It'll be a dream come true.
She will be there.
Yeah, she will. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. You got to get back into the afternoon lecture.
Thank you for listening to Unspoken Words, a Selective Mutism podcast hosted by me, Dr. E, and the Smart Center. This episode and all episodes of Unspoken Words is produced by New Edition Productions. Don't forget to submit any questions you have from today's episode using our Ask Dr. E form on our website. Just head to selectivemutismcenter.org/ask-DRE. I'd love to answer your question in a future episode or blog post. Remember, for the best of this episode and every episode of Unspoken Words, please follow the podcast on Instagram and YouTube. We are at Unspoken Words _podcast on Instagram and Unspoken Words by DRE on YouTube. Or join our newsletter for additional SM content. We release new episodes every other Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you next time.